Stop. Before you scroll, answer one question. What happens when the president fires someone the Constitution says can't be fired? What happens when the law says judges appoint, but the White House says the president removes, and nobody is willing to back down? Because this is not about a short email. This is not about one man who never got to do the job he spent decades preparing for. This is about whether the president of the United States has the power to dismantle the entire federal prosecution system, one district court at a time, and whether anyone can stop him. At 7:40 a.m. on a Wednesday morning in July, Roger Rogoff raised his right hand, took an oath of office, and became the United States Attorney for the Western District of Washington. 54 minutes later, he was sitting in a lobby waiting to meet his predecessor when his phone buzzed with an email titled, "A Message from the President." He had been fired. Before he ever unpacked a box, sat behind a desk, or before the public even knew he had been hired. 54 minutes. That is not a tenure. That is a statement. What? Are you kidding me? You can't make this shit up. Roger Rogoff is not a political activist. He's not a resistance figure. He is a 57-year-old prosecutor who spent 20 years in state prosecution, 6 years as a federal prosecutor, and served as a King County Superior Court judge. He handles sexual assault cases, domestic violence, gang prosecutions. He was the first director of Washington State's Office of Independent Investigations, the office that reviews police deadly force incidents. This is a man who has spent his entire career on the side of the law, not on the side of any party. When the 17 active federal judges in the Western District of Washington sat down to choose someone to fill the vacancy that had been sitting open for 3 years, they did not pick a partisan. They picked a prosecutor who had appeared in front of many of those judges, a prosecutor who had tried cases against some of them, a prosecutor they trusted. But here's what you need to understand. The Western District of Washington has not had a Senate-confirmed U.S. attorney since Nick Brown stepped down in June 2023. 3 years. For 3 years, the office that handles federal prosecutions in Seattle and Tacoma has been run by people the Senate never voted on, people the president never formally nominated, people serving under temporary titles that were supposed to expire after 120 days. The law 28 U.S.C. section 546 says the Attorney General can appoint an interim U.S. attorney for 120 days. After that, if the president hasn't nominated someone and the Senate hasn't confirmed them, the local federal district judges step in. The judges get to appoint someone to serve until the vacancy is properly filled. That's the check. That's the fail-safe. That is Congress saying you cannot leave a federal prosecutor's office vacant indefinitely. If the political branches can't get their act together, the courts can make sure the work continues. In October 2025, the Trump administration appointed Charles Neal Floyd to be the interim U.S. attorney. Floyd was a former Tacoma immigration judge known for a hard-line approach. His appointment immediately drew opposition from Washington's senior senator, Patty Murray, and from civil rights groups. So the administration did something clever. They never formally nominated Floyd to the Senate. Instead, they let his 120-day clock run out in February 2026. And when that happened, rather than sending a nomination to the Senate, they shifted Floyd's title. They made him first assistant U.S. attorney, and they simply kept him running the office. This is not a legal gray area. This is a workaround. The administration has used this tactic in other districts too. In New Jersey, Alina Habba was moved into the first assistant role to bypass the 120-day limit. In New York, the same thing happened with the Northern District. The pattern is clear. The administration does not want to face Senate confirmation. They do not want to have hearings. They do not want to have to defend their choices in public. They just want to install people who will carry out the president's agenda. And they want to do it without ever having to ask for permission. The federal judges in Seattle had had enough. After waiting months for a legitimate nomination, the 17 active judges decided to exercise their statutory right. They began a public job search in January. They asked applicants a question that reveals everything about the moment we are in. How would you respond if you were fired? Rogoff told them he would consider a legal challenge. That is what the judges were looking for. A prosecutor who would fight for the rule of law. On the morning of July 15th, Chief U.S. District Judge David Estudillo signed the order. He administered the oath of office at 7:40 a.m. Rogoff was officially the U.S. Attorney. He walked from the courthouse to the U.S. Attorney's office. He sat down in the lobby, waiting for the transition meeting with Floyd. And at 8:34 a.m., while sitting in that lobby, he looked at his phone, an email from the White House Presidential Personnel Office. The message was brief. He had been terminated, effective immediately. 54 minutes. Rogoff never even made it past the lobby. He never met with Floyd. He never spoke to the staff. He never signed a single document. He never made a single prosecution decision. He was the U.S. attorney for exactly as long as it takes to watch an episode of a television drama. And then he was gone. Here is what makes this moment different from everything that came before. When the administration fired court-appointed U.S. attorneys in New Jersey and New York, those prosecutors quietly stepped aside. They accepted the firing. They did not fight. Roger Rogoff is fighting. He has retained the national law firm HKM, and he is preparing to sue President Trump and the Department of Justice. The rule of law requires that prosecutorial decisions remain free from political interference and that lawful judicial appointments be respected, he said. And to the reporters who asked him about his 54-minute tenure, he said something remarkable. Greatest hour in my life. Think about that. The greatest hour of his life was not the 20 years as a state prosecutor, not the 6 years as a federal prosecutor, not the years as a judge. It was the 54 minutes when he was allowed to serve the law until the White House took that away. Senator Patty Murray released a statement that cut to the core of the issue. He should have never been fired. But the president wants to appoint an out-of-touch extremist who will put Trump over the rule of law. This administration doesn't want to deal with advice and consent. They just want to install cronies to carry out a corrupt political agenda. Those are strong words. But she is not wrong about the pattern. The administration's position is clear. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche wrote on social media, district court judges can appoint a temporary U.S. attorney and POTUS can fire them. And then he added something more telling. WDWA judges abandoned the time-honored process of consultation with the administration. Abandoned. That is the accusation, that by not running their choice past the administration, the judges forfeited the right to have their choice respected. Think about what that means. It means the administration believes that even when the law gives judges the power to appoint, the administration still has veto power, still has control. That is not a consultation. That is a permission slip. This is the Unitary Executive Theory in action. The idea that Article 2 of the Constitution gives the president absolute authority to manage and terminate any executive branch officer, and federal prosecutors are fundamentally executive officers. In their view, even if a statute allows judges to appoint a temporary prosecutor, those judges cannot strip the president of his constitutional right to fire. The president's removal power, they argue, is absolute. It cannot be limited by Congress. It cannot be limited by the courts. It is simply the president's, and that is the end of the discussion. But here's the counter argument. Congress put the judges in the statute for a reason. Congress specifically gave the judiciary a role in filling vacancies because it wanted a check on executive power. If the president's removal power is truly absolute, then that check is meaningless. The judges can appoint, but the president can instantly fire. The law gives with one hand and takes away with the other. So, the question at the heart of the Rogoff lawsuit is, can Congress protect appointees from being fired? Can it impose a for-cause removal requirement on certain executive officers? Or is every executive officer subject to the president's pleasure? This is not a new debate. The Supreme Court has wrestled with removal powers for decades. In Humphrey's Executor versus United States, the court said Congress could protect members of independent agencies from at-will removal. But those are independent agencies. They are not the Department of Justice. In Saylor Law versus CFPB, the court said the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau structure violated the separation of powers because its director could only be fired for cause. That was an independent agency too, but U.S. attorneys, they work in the Department of Justice. They are under the Attorney General. They are clearly executive officers. Does that mean they can be fired at will, even if a statute tries to limit that power? This is what Rogoff's lawsuit is going to force the courts to decide. And the White House might have a real fight on its hands. Unlike previous dismissals, Rogoff is not quietly stepping aside. He is suing. And by taking this to court, he is setting up a monumental legal battle that could eventually reach the Supreme Court. The administration is not just firing individual prosecutors. It is starving the system. Think about what happens to a federal prosecutor's office that has no confirmed U.S. attorney for 3 years. The staff is doing the work. The line prosecutors are still handling cases. But morale breaks down. Credibility erodes. Defense attorneys know the top prosecutor is a placeholder. The judges know the office is operating under a legal cloud. The victims and defendants know the system is not functioning as designed. And that is the point. A dysfunctional system is a controlled system. A dysfunctional system is easier to bend to political will. This is not a theory. The administration has been systematically exploiting the 120-day clock. They appoint an interim. They let the clock run out. They shift the title to first assistant. They continue running the office. The Senate never gets a vote. The public never gets a hearing. The judges never get to appoint someone with actual authority. The system freezes. And the president gets to put his people in place indefinitely without ever having to answer for it. And this brings us to the pattern. In February 2026, federal judges in the Northern District of New York appointed Donald Kinsella to fill a vacancy. He was sworn in. Within hours, he was fired by the Trump administration. Same tactic, same justification, same result. In New Jersey, Desiree Grace was appointed by judges. Same thing, fired within hours. This is not a series of isolated incidents. This is a deliberate strategy. The administration is testing the limits of the statute. They are challenging the judiciary's power to appoint. And they are betting that the courts will eventually defer to executive authority. They are betting that the Supreme Court, with its current composition, will rule that the president's removal power is absolute and that the statute cannot bind it. But here is what might make this fight different. Rogoff is not just fighting for his job. He is fighting for the principle that the process matters. The rule of law, in his words, is everything for the way these things work. He said the administration's practice of bypassing the Senate is not the way to run the Department of Justice. When you have this sort of made-up way of putting people in positions, he said the process breaks down, morale breaks down, the ability to do the work breaks down, the ability for the work to be respected and credible with judges and defense attorneys and victims and defendants is hurt. And he is right. This is not about politics. It is about whether the system can function when one branch refuses to participate. Rogoff's legal team is preparing its filings. The federal prosecutor's office in Seattle remains in limbo. Charles Neal Floyd is still running the office as first assistant. The Senate still has not voted on anyone. The judges are still waiting, and the administration is still firing anyone they appoint. If Rogoff wins his lawsuit, it will establish that judges can appoint U.S. attorneys who cannot be fired at will. It will create a class of independent prosecutors who answer to the law, not to the president. It will restore a check on executive power that Congress specifically designed. If he loses, it will affirm that the president's removal power is absolute. It will mean that the statute is effectively dead. It will mean the Senate's advice and consent role is optional. It will mean the entire architecture of federal prosecution is subject to the whim of the White House. The president will be able to install anyone he wants for as long as he wants, with no input from the other branches. This is the choice we are facing, a binary choice. Either the president's removal power is absolute or it is not. Either the checks Congress built into the system matter or they do not. Either the Senate has a role in confirming federal prosecutors or it does not. There is no middle ground. There is no compromise. There is only the question: who actually controls the machinery of federal justice? The President of the United States acting alone, or the system of checks and balances that the Constitution designed? And here's the question they are not asking in the news headlines. When you see a story like this, a prosecutor appointed at 7:40 a.m. and fired at 8:34 a.m., what is really happening? You're watching a constitutional crisis unfold in real time. You're watching the executive branch test whether it can dismantle the separation of powers. You're watching a slow-moving coup against the rule of law, one firing at a time. Rogoff knew this was possible. He knew the administration might fire him immediately. He said he was pretty settled with the idea that this was probably going to be the result. But he took the oath anyway. He walked into the lobby anyway. He sat down and waited anyway. because he believed the rule of law matters more than the risk. And now he is asking the courts to decide whether that belief is worth anything. What do you think will happen when the lawsuit is filed? Will the Supreme Court take the case? Will they rule that a president can fire anyone, anytime, for any reason? Will they tell Congress that their statute is meaningless? Or will they say the checks must hold? This is not a hypothetical. This is the future being written right now, and the outcome will determine what kind of country we live in. Not for the next election, for the next generation. Because once the president has unfettered power to fire federal prosecutors, there is no going back. Once the Senate loses its role, it does not get it back. Once the judiciary is pushed out of the appointment process, they are not invited back in. This is the architecture of American democracy, and it is being deconstructed one 54-minute appointment at a time. 3 questions to ask yourself. First, do you believe the president should be able to fire any federal prosecutor at any time, for any reason, with no oversight? Second, do you believe the Senate should have a role in confirming the people who enforce federal law? Third, if the president can bypass the Senate and the judiciary, who is left to check his power? You have to answer those questions for yourself. And you have to recognize that inaction is a choice. If you do nothing, you are choosing to accept the outcome. You are choosing to let the system collapse. You are choosing to let the executive branch run the entire show. And that choice has consequences. Roger Rogoff sat in a lobby for 54 minutes. He never got to do the job. He never got to serve the law. He never got to fight for justice in the way he had spent his entire career preparing for. But he is still fighting. He is still suing. He is still refusing to accept that the rule of law can be dismantled by one email. And that is the question left in the room as the final word fades. What are you willing to fight for? Until next time.